Stack is too heavy. Oh my god, what am I doing here? Oh my god, what am I doing here? Truly, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Hi, hello, my name is Amy. Here are my 10 best books of 2024. I read over 200 books this year. It's an insane amount to read. I said this on TikTok and I do really believe it. It's too much. Like, I'm reading too much. But we should all benefit from the errors of my ways in reading so much. I put in a lot of time. I read 200 books, and these are the best books that I read in 2024. My 10th best book of 2024 is We Spread by Ian Reid. It is this literary take on a horror story that follows this older woman named Penny. She's getting up there in age and she's recently lost her long-term partner, so she's been living alone in her apartment when she has this fall, and the people in her life decide that because she's unable to take care of herself, she should be checked into a retirement home. It's this small insular retirement community that only has 3 other people that are living there, plus the 2 people that run it. And the big rule with this retirement home is that you are not allowed to leave. So much of this book takes place in the 4 walls of this retirement home as Penny first adjusts to having community and having somebody to take care of her and how nice that feels, and then sort of starts to lose her grip on reality and time as she spends day after day in this retirement home doing the same thing over and over again. Things at this retirement home are also a little bit strange. The people who run it are quite weird. You're gonna feel like you're losing your mind in this book because Penny is losing her mind. She starts to lose her grip on time as the days blend into each other. She also starts to sense that maybe the people who run this retirement home are taking advantage of the people that live there in a specific way. And as she starts to distrust the people that run the retirement home, everything goes off the rails. It is an absolute descent into madness. And I think the commentary within this book about what it means to get older, it means to not be trusted with your own story and your own memory, and sort of the way that society at large kind of minimizes the experience of the elderly was just so well done. I think he has something that he really wants to say with this book, and he did a pretty good job doing it. This entire book feels a little hazy, so it's not one to go into if you need very clear, precise plot or clear, precise endings, I would say, but it's definitely one that's going to be thought-provoking, and I would highly recommend it. My 9th best book of 2024 is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This book is no stranger to best books of the year lists. It made it on the New York Times best books of the year list, I think, this year. It is exceptional. Kaveh Akbar is a poet, so every moment of reading this book feels like some of the most gorgeous writing that you've ever read. It follows this character named Cyrus. He is in his 20s and 30s. He's Iranian American and queer and grappling with addiction, also sort of bumbling around, living in the Midwest, trying to figure out the art that he wants to make. A lot of Cyrus's life has been shaped by the loss of his mother when he was a young boy. He lost his mother, who was flying in a passenger plane that was shot down by American forces. This book is definitely shaped by that event. You follow multiple perspectives. You follow Cyrus as he's sort of trying to figure out the art project that he wants to work on and settles on the fact that he wants to write a book about martyrs. You follow Cyrus's dad, who is a single dad raising his son in post 9/11 America in the Midwest. You follow Cyrus's mom in the years when she first meets her husband in Iran and then their immigration to the United States. And you also follow Cyrus's uncle, who is honestly the most interesting perspective in my opinion. His uncle served in the Iranian army as a sort of harbinger of death who would ride around battlefields and convince people who had mortal wounds to die. I really appreciated the way this book explores identity, what it means to be a brown person and an immigrant living in post 9/11 America. I also feel like this book does a really interesting job of talking about what it means to give your life for a cause, what it means to give your life for a person, what it means to give your life for an artistic pursuit. A lot of that is kind of woven into the sort of structure and story that is going on here. You're gonna love Cyrus as a character. He's kind of highly lovable in spite of all of his flaws, the ways that he behaves towards people in his life. He's just a really, really lovable character. The prose is outstanding. Like I said, I just think that I think you can even see all of the tabs that I have here of all of the quotes that I wanted to remember. This is a very remarkable book. I think it is super special, and I'm so glad that it's getting the praise that it deserves. My 7th best book of 2024 is Devotions by Mary Oliver. This is a collection of her life's work. If you are not familiar with Mary Oliver, she is a poet who sort of became famous for writing these poems about the natural world. She does a really beautiful job of sort of relating the human experience to the natural world around you in a way that makes you feel really at one with the the world. It's kind of hard not to love Mary Oliver for what she's doing, of putting words to kind of secret thoughts that you've had about yourself, maybe feelings that you're not worthy or feelings that you're lost in your path, and she'll put words to those experiences and then also tie them back to the natural world in a way that is going to make your problems feel small. And as she sort of connects you to the natural world around you, she's going to scramble up your brain chemistry in a way that is going to have you more attentive to the things that you see when you're out in the world, the trees that are around you, the stream that you walk by, the birds outside your window. She does this incredible job of just making you feel like one organism in this giant animal kingdom. This is a collection of her life's work, so it has excerpts from most of her published collections. I think all of her published collections. What were some of my favorites? The Journey is my favorite of all time. I think if you actually pause right now, stop watching this YouTube video, go and check out The Journey by Mary Oliver. And if you don't like it, don't read this collection. If you do like it, I think you're gonna like it. You should read this collection. It's very highly special. I could talk about Mary Oliver forever. She is my favorite poet. I think she is outstanding. I miss her, even though I never knew her. Yeah, this is definitely a book to check out. It also, I think, was maybe chosen for Read with Jenna's book club pick in December. So if you can find a copy of it that doesn't have that like kind of gross purple circle on it, I would recommend you pick it up. That's Devotions by Mary Oliver. The sixth best book of 2024 is If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. What a special literary fiction story that is completely unlike anything I've ever read and sort of has adhered to the interior of my brain. Truly could not stop thinking about this book if I wanted to. It follows this tumultuous love story between this Egyptian-American woman who's recently graduated from school and moves to Cairo to teach English to businessmen. And this relationship she starts with this boy from Shoberheat, that's how he's referred to throughout the book. They are both unnamed characters, so you never actually find out either of the characters' first names. He's an out-of-work photojournalist who grew up in the like sort of rural areas outside of Cairo and moved to Cairo to document the Arab Spring. And in the years since the Arab Spring, as the global appetite for news out of Egypt has waned, his ability to get work has dried up and he's now living very impoverished. And they start this relationship that at first seems kind of mutually beneficial. She gains a certain level of authenticity and safety moving around Cairo at his side. He also is financially taken care of by her because she has money. Her parents are pretty wealthy back in the United States. This relationship sort of cracks open a very interesting conversation around class dynamics, gender differences, identity and identity politics as they sort of go back and forth about what it means to be truly Egyptian, what it means to be an Egyptian who lived in Egypt during the Arab Spring, and so many other things. This book is told in 3 different parts, which are each structured a little bit differently. The first 2 parts ping-pong back and forth between the main 2 characters. You hear these like staccato-like chapters from each of them as they narrate their experience and what is going on with this relationship. The third part is going to pick you up and drop you somewhere completely different, and it is such an interesting finale to this book. And the third part, to be honest, is the reason why this book made it on my best books of the year list. I would highly recommend this book, particularly to anyone who likes kind of... Actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna tell you. I can't tell you anymore because when I was talking about it on TikTok, I think I maybe spoiled parts of it and I don't want to spoil it for you. So we're not gonna say anything more. I think you have to read it. It's a pretty short book. The audiobook is also fantastic. I tabbed a lot of things in here because I think it has just some interesting one-liners and also interesting larger conversations about what it means to be an immigrant returning to the place where your family is from, what it means to be truly from a place and to have that place be like very intrinsic to your DNA. I absolutely love this book. I think it's underhyped, and also the people that I know that have read it also really like it. So I think it's hyped, but it's also underhyped, and I would highly recommend you read it. This is your water break within this video. Please grab some water. It is super important to stay hydrated. Just like pause for 20 seconds so that you can get some water. I had some water. We're going to talk about book 6, which is a book that I'm sure you've seen before. Although there's some coming that I don't think you maybe have. My 6th best book of 2024 is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This made it onto the New York Times best book of the century list. It is the best book of the century according to the New York Times. I don't know if it's like the best book of the century, as evidenced by the fact that it is number 6 on this list. But I do really love it. It is this historical fiction that is set in the 1950s in Naples, in the sort of rural areas outside of the city. It follows these 2 young girls who become fast friends. This book kicks off in present day, and you hear the son of one of the women reaching out to the other other woman to try and track down his missing mom because she's gone missing. And it sort of prompts the main character of this book, Lanu, to start writing about her experience being friends with Leela as a kid. Leela's the best friend. And this book follows those two characters through their adolescence and childhood as they compete with each other over academic things. As they get a little bit older, they start to compete with each other over boys and social things. Even though they are from the same community, they are experiencing different childhoods because Lanu's family is much more willing to continue to pay and support her going to school. She rapidly becomes more educated despite the fact that Leela is maybe on paper the smarter of the two of them. And it creates this kind of like seismic shift in their relationship dynamic. As Lanu becomes more accomplished, Leela sort of seeks to become accomplished in different areas of her life and sort of has to reshape what she wants to do with her life because going to university or college is not on the table. And you follow this sort of back and forth between the two girls as they both accomplish things and then like look to the other one to see if that person is impressed by the thing that they've just accomplished. It's such an interesting relationship dynamic between these two characters. Elena Ferrante writes this really vibrant community full of so many fleshed out characters that feel so real, and you kind of see as Leela and Lanu get older, as these characters enter into their stories and then leave, who's important to the girls and thus important to the story. I think it's definitely not for everyone, as evidenced by the fact that a lot of people don't like this book very much. It is a historical fiction, so you have to like historical fiction. It's also pretty wordy. Like it's not want for words. I think they really lend to kind of the scene building and the character development within this book, but I have already read the second book in this series. I really enjoyed that. I'm excited to finish the series, maybe this year, maybe next year, we'll see. Such an interesting idea for a book, a series of books that follows the same characters as they get older, and I think Elena Ferrante does it beautifully and renders this community and these characters with such care and skill. It's sort of a masterclass in writing female friendship. Fifth best book of 2024 is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I'm kind of shocked that there's a contemporary romance on this list. I actually read a lot of contemporary romance, but they almost never make it on my best books of the year list because I think a romance has to be doing something really specific, something really impressive for me to want to recommend it so widely. Romance is so subjective, but that's what I feel like Abby Jimenez is doing with Just for the Summer. This book follows Emma and Justin. They meet on Reddit because they both believe they have this curse where the people that they break up with go on to meet their significant other or their spouse or soulmate directly after dating them. And they decide that they want to meet up and date each other in order to break each other's curse. That's sort of the like kind of hokey plot of this book. It doesn't sound very sophisticated. I'm gonna be honest, it's not. It brings these two characters together who are sort of in very different life places, but have a lot of shared, I don't want to say experience, but a lot of shared issues in their lives. Emma decides to move to Minnesota to date Justin for the summer, which is where you get the title of this book. As the chemistry between them sort of immediately pops off the page, it becomes super clear that like Just for the Summer probably isn't going to work for the two of them. Also, as the book progresses, they start to learn new things about each other. Justin's mom has recently embezzled money from her company and is headed to prison, so he's about to become the guardian for his three younger siblings. And Emma sort of has this best friendship with her foster sister because she was in foster care after her mother greatly neglected her as a child. And pretty early in this book, Emma's mother comes back into the picture. And it's this really interesting story between these two characters who have so much going on in their personal lives, so much going on between them and their family members, so much baggage that they're carrying around, and what happens when they like kind of find a safe place with each other. I think it's so beautifully done. Abby Jimenez, particularly with the last series, I've read the two books prior in the interconnected series that this book belongs to, and I think she's doing something really special with the way that she writes these really deep character stories, these characters that have a lot of baggage that they're carrying, simultaneously find such safety in each other. Banter in particular worked really well for me. It's a very, very special book. I read this book twice, and I think I thought on the second time around that it wasn't going to be as good as I remembered, or maybe like bits that should be cringy are going to cringe me out so much that I wasn't going to enjoy it as much, and I liked it even more the second time I read it. I don't know what to say, but I just think this is the best romance book that was published in 2024, and I read a lot of them. Yeah, I think this is totally worth your time. Maybe not if you don't read romance, but if you do read romance even casually, I think you should pick this book up. Okay, we are in the final four. My fourth best book of 2024 is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. I read this book less than a month ago. I had this idea of what my best books of the year list was going to look like, and I read this book and I was like, nope, this is the book that is going to shift around that entire list. This is also a historical fiction. It's set in the 1950s. Is it set in 1950 exactly? In Florida, and it follows this young black boy who has an altercation with this white boy in his neighborhood, gets sentenced by the very racist justice system of his community to go spend 6 months in this reform school. That's what they refer to it as, the reformatory. It's actually sort of a juvenile prison, and the story follows split POVs between him and his older sister as he is sent to this reform school for 6 months and she is simultaneously trying to get him out of this reform school. The reformatory has all of these horrible rumors that circulate about it, about the mistreatment of the kids that go there and sort of the way that kids go, and then if they do make it out alive, they're never the same. This book is so much more than just that plot, because the main character of this book, Robbie, is also sort of able to commune with ghosts, which is something that you sort of realize kind of maybe early to midway through the book, as he's able to commune with the ghost of his mother. When he goes to this reform school, that talent and skill become really central to the plot, because the reform school, the reformatory, is highly haunted by the ghosts of many kids who have lived there and who have died there. The people who run this reformatory are absolutely not concerned with the well-being of the kids that are there. They are, you know, abusing them and taking advantage of them. And this book sort of follows Robbie and his sister's scheme to try and get him out of the reformatory alive, and sort of the people that they enlist to try and help him to do that. Maybe some of the people at the reformatory, maybe some of the people on the outside. And it is such an interesting story of like familial love between these two young characters. I just think it's one of the best paced books that I read all year. This book is long. It is paced so well. There was a night I was reading this book where I truly was up until 2 a.m. Like, I read 150 pages in one sitting because I could not go to bed without knowing what was happening. The other super interesting thing about this book is that it is based off of a true story of something that happened to Tananarive Due's relative. He was sent in the 1950s to a reform school that is sort of the inspiration for the reform school in this book. What an interesting reworking of her family history in order to create this story. It is horrific, it is supernatural, it is fascinating, it is so well paced, the characters are lovable. I just think, honestly, maybe if I had more time to sit with this, it would be even higher on this list. I don't know, but I read it a month ago, so we're working off of our best knowledge. This is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. Just please, trust me, read it, okay? This is so exciting. We are in the final three. My third best book of 2024 is There's Always This Year by Hanif Abdurraqib. This is my favorite nonfiction book that I read in 2024. If you aren't familiar with Hanif Abdurraqib, I'm an absolute stan of this author. He is this poet who writes nonfiction that kind of weaves together personal anecdotes from his own life alongside pop culture that we all consume, alongside social criticism. And the way that he does this is so masterful. He's like a true artist. This book is a memoir that sort of talks about what it means to call a place home, what it means to feel loyal or like allegiant to your hometown. Hanif Abdurraqib is famously from Columbus. If you follow him on social media, you'll know he's from Columbus. The book follows him and sort of parallels the life of Hanif Abdurraqib to the life of LeBron James, who was growing up in Ohio in a similar year playing on similar basketball courts. Takes a look at their lives side by side in order to kind of analyze what it means to interact with your hometown and to maybe leave your hometown and come back. This book is structured like a game of basketball. There are 4 quarters, and with each quarter you make it further and further into Hanif Abdurraqib's life. And he talks a lot about some of the most personal things that he's ever been through. He talks about his experience with homelessness. He talks about his experience losing jobs and trying to make it as a writer, his experience growing up with his family, and he also talks about macro issues like police brutality and the effect of that on the Black community. The way that he weaves all of these conversations together, conversations about his own personal life, conversations about the trajectory of LeBron James as an athlete and as a basketball player, and conversations about what is going on with society at large, is so masterful. There are almost not words to describe it. I've read 3 of his books now, is that right? 3 of his books. Last year, one of his other nonfiction books made it on my best books of the year list. I think there is no one writing nonfiction the way that Hanif Abdurraqib is writing nonfiction right now. A small aside, I also grew up playing basketball. I was on my high school basketball team, and it was a pretty big part of my childhood. So to hear somebody talk about something that is just so important to me, and then to use it as sort of a metaphor or like a guiding structure to talk about other things going on in the world, is so just beautiful to to me. It's kind of hard to compare this to anything but Hanif Abdurraqib's own work because I don't think anyone is writing nonfiction as creatively as he is doing it right now, and I'm really grateful he wrote this book. It means so much to me to hear about his own life, but also to hear it kind of paralleled with the life of somebody who is like very notable and famous for being so good at basketball. He uses those parallels also to sort of open up a dialogue about what it means to make it out of a community, what it means to rise in fame and notoriety such that you are like less authentic to the community that you're from. So many interesting things at work in this book, so many interesting conversation points. I would highly recommend it. This is one of those nonfiction books that I think so many people could love. I think people who don't like basketball could love. I think people who don't read that much but like basketball could love. Anyone who grew up in the 80s I think could really love this. I've read it twice this year. I will continue to reread all of Hanif Abdurraqib's work because he just is unmatched. The second best book of 2024 is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Have you ever heard of it? Sally Rooney is an incredibly popular author, and I am a huge fan of Sally Rooney, and I'm an even bigger fan of Intermezzo, which is her newest release. It came out in 2024. This book follows brothers Ivan and Peter who are living in Ireland, and what happens when their dad suddenly passes away and sort of throws the two of them into close proximity for the first time in a little bit. There's a pretty big age gap between Ivan and Peter. Ivan is in his early 20s and Peter is in his like early 30s. There's about a 10-year age gap, and that age gap has really defined their relationship with each other and their relationship with their family members. Peter and Ivan kind of butt heads a lot because of their sort of preconceptions about the other person. This book sort of follows the brothers separately. There's not actually that many scenes where they overlap and are together. What you see is Ivan living his life and Peter living his life. Ivan is about to meet this woman named Margaret who's a little bit older than him, and they're about to start a relationship. Ivan is this chess prodigy who hasn't been playing very well lately. He and Peter both played chess as kids, but Ivan was a significantly better player, and that kind of also goes into the brotherly relationship between the two characters. Peter is starting this newish relationship with this woman named Naomi who is in her early 20s, and they have this kind of strange relationship where a lot of it is based on him financially caring for Naomi, and he's also navigating a very long-term friendship with this woman named Sylvia who was his ex, who broke up with him after she had a very traumatic accident. It's such an interesting character study. I think that's what Sally Rooney does best with her books, is like deep character studies. That's why all of her books are so character forward and don't have that much plot. Big issue in their relationship is that Peter is pretty disapproving of Ivan's new relationship with this woman Margaret who's much older than him. Peter has all of these weird rights and wrongs in his head about relationships and how they should work, and it impacts his own relationships, but it also impacts his kind of judgments of other people's. Ivan has spent so much of his life in isolation, and he finally has found somebody who he connects with and who really appreciates him for who he is, and to have Peter reject and disapprove of that relationship is kind of a gut punch to the brotherhood between them. I think this book is going to speak to the siblings out there. Not to quote Jane Austen, but this is a book that if I loved it a little bit less, maybe I could talk about it more. Like, I really do feel that way. What a special book. Sally Rooney gets more impressive to me with every book that she writes. I think this is a really, really impressive book, and it makes me more optimistic than ever to continue reading from her. I just can't believe I have to wait 3 or 4 years to read the next one. Well, this is Intermezzo. I would highly, highly recommend it. If you don't like Sally Rooney, I'm not going to recommend it to you. Like, don't read this thinking this is the book that's going to make you like Sally Rooney. I think if you've read something by her and you don't like it, then like trust your gut on that one. If you do like Sally Rooney and you haven't picked this up, I'll push you. Please, please read this. This is excellent. This is Intermezzo. This is my best book of the year. I've read this book twice. It is extraordinarily meaningful to me. This is Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. This is branded maybe as a contemporary literary fiction story, but it also gets classified as a science fiction story a little bit, and I think that's how it was classified in the Goodreads Choice Awards this year. This book follows Adina. She is born in 1970 to a single mom in Philadelphia. As a child, she discovers this fax machine that allows her to communicate with people from a faraway planet. They tell her that she is one of them and that she has been sent to Earth to observe humankind and report back on humanity, on Earth specifically, so that the people of this faraway planet can decide if Earth is going to be the planet they will one day move to if their planet becomes inhospitable. That's sort of kind of like the backbone of the plot. This is not a very plot-heavy book. You follow Adina through her childhood as she's sending these missives back to this faraway planet, sort of pointing out the oddities and weirdness of how humans behave and trying to explain that to somebody who is unfamiliar with them. them. And I think that's kind of the part where this book really shines, or shined for me, is the way that it kind of exposes those just weird, strange things that humans do that don't make any sense. The book is a love letter to atypicality. Adina is very different from the people around her. She feels really isolated from the people around her. She has trouble making friends. She has a lot of trouble finding romantic relationships. And she kind of is trying to live the life of a human because she's assimilated to being there and being on Earth. She also doesn't feel like she fits in. And that's a big part of what this book is about. It's about that kind of loneliness that comes when you can't find somebody that you fit in with. You can't find a place where you fit in. She sort of longs for this faraway planet. She really wants to go back. She wants to live with the people who she thinks she'll finally fit in with. The people who she's sending these faxes to have no interest in bringing her to their planet. And so Adina lives a really isolated and solitary life. This character is definitely coded as autistic. There's also a certain degree to which this book is representing asexuality. This is an incredibly difficult book to explain why I love so much, because to a certain degree, I just do. And I said that in my review of it on TikTok. I was like, this is my favorite book of the year. Why? It just is. I love it that much. Like, why do I love this book? I just do. This is also an exceptionally written book. There are one-liners in this book that I thought were probably the most beautiful sentences I've read all year. The author is tackling so many human subjects under the guise of this alien narrator. It's probably miscategorized if people are trying to sell it to you as a science fiction book, because it's speculative for sure, but it's not really science fiction. It's a very human story. I love Adina with my whole heart. I think this is a deeply special book, and it is my favorite book of 2024. Okay, these, can you see them all? Let me see if I can. These are my best books of 2024. I love all of them so much. I would highly recommend them to you. I think they are all outstanding. I read over 200. I'm gonna put this down. This is actually quite heavy. If this actually goes live, if I commit to actually posting this, will I do that? I don't know. This will be the first video on this YouTube channel, so do all of the things that you would normally do if you like something on YouTube. You can like this video, you can subscribe. You don't have to do any of that, whatever. Not my business, that's your business. But if you did read some books in 2024, let me know down in the comments what your favorite book of 2024 is. I really need more inspiration moving into 2025. I'm going to be reading less, but I want to be reading higher quality things. So I need things that have been vetted by people and that I think I'm really going to love. So let me know what your best book of 2024 was downstairs. And I will see you. Will I see you in the next one? Will I ever post again on YouTube ever again? That's anyone's guess. Have a nice day. How do people hold this many books? How do people hold this many books? This is certainly not the way.